We want to go now, though, to Omaha, Nebraska, where Iowa Republican Senator Joni Ernst has crossed the state line to talk with us this morning. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning, Margaret. Thank you.
I want to talk about another story in Asia, and that is what has been happening overnight with our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. The North Koreans seem to be bashing President Trump's hopes here for a quick denuclearization deal. While Secretary Pompeo is speaking in positive, optimistic terms, the North Koreans said he had gangster-like diplomacy. It seems like a return to this hardline rhetoric. Have you seen any indication of tangible progress?
Well, I do think talks are progress, and so I applaud the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, for engaging in these discussions. The ultimate goal is denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and if these talks will eventually lead to that, I am very, very supportive of those efforts. Of course, we're going to hear hard talk coming from North Korea. This is not the path that they want to take, but it is what the rest of the world wants to see.
How long do you think the U.S. should wait before restarting its military exercises?
Well, I think we should continue with military exercises. Obviously, I believe that they have a purpose in keeping the peninsula safe and making sure that should anything ever happen, we are well rehearsed with our allies to engage. So I would say soon if we don't see those talks continue.
Also, because you sit on armed services, I want to get your views here on the upcoming meetings that the president will be having this week with our military allies at NATO, and then with an adversary, as many would describe him, Vladimir Putin, a few days after that. When he was on this program last week, Ambassador John Bolton, the national security advisor to the president, proposed partnering with Russia in Syria to oust Iran. Are you concerned that in exchange for such an agreement, the U.S. would draw down its almost 2,000 forces that it has on the ground in Syria?
I would be concerned. We need stability in that region, and I would just caution the president as we move forward with any discussions with Russia. Obviously, Russia is not our friend. We oppose many of the actions that they've taken going back to the invasion of Crimea and so forth. So I would be very cautious in those moves, but if there is a way that we can partner and put a lid on Iran, I would support that. But again, being very cautious, because I don't see that Russia would ever be a true friend or ally to the United States of America.
Some of your Republican colleagues, though, recently traveled to Moscow this week and met with Russian officials. Do you think it was a mistake for Senators Thune, Senator Shelby to have gone?
No, I don't think it's a mistake. Again, if we can engage in discussions that are productive, that's okay. But again, just being very cautious and understanding that they will never be a true friend to the United States of America. So again, just as it is with North Korea, discussions are good. And if we can move towards a resolution where the world becomes a safer place, we should always strive for that. But again, we just need to be very cautious with a number of these leaders, because I don't know that they have the same interests that the United States of America does.
I want to ask you about something close to home for you, and that is what China is now calling the largest trade war in economic history. Yes. What are you hearing from so many of those voters in Iowa who are supportive of the president but worried about what this will mean for them?
And you hit the nail on the head, Margaret. Our voters are supportive of President Trump. Our farmers just really think that he is doing the right thing. But unfortunately, we are caught in the crosshairs. America's farmers and ranchers are always the first to be retaliated against in these types of trade negotiations. And the tariffs that have been imposed and the retaliation stemming from that puts us in a very vulnerable position as our markets go down. So I would just encourage the president. Of course, we want great deals, and I know he'll be able to negotiate those, but we would like to see a number of these trade agreements wrapped up in short order. The sooner, the better.
Well, do you hear of any progress? I mean, it sounds like the president's only talking about escalation, and are you asking the president to send any kind of financial aid to some of these farmers?
Well, no. And matter of fact, we push back on financial aid. Here in the Midwest, we believe in trade, not aid. We don't want another welfare type program going to our farmers. They want to produce and they want to sell their goods to markets. So that's what we strive for. But I did speak with Ambassador Lighthizer, our U.S. trade rep, yesterday, and I did get encouraging news from him. I think there are a number of agreements that we're very close on, and he is working on a number of new free trade agreements. So I am encouraged. I would ask that we stay strong, but at some point we have to close the deal. And as I said, I would like to see the president do that sooner rather than later.
Just to clarify, you're talking about markets other than China, perhaps deals with Mexico, Canada?
Absolutely. Markets other than China, I believe that we can work to a point where we have Mexico and Canada on board. I think China will be a much longer haul, but there are other agreements that are being worked on as well. And I would encourage the ambassador as well as the president to get those done soon so that we can start developing those opportunities for our Iowa farmers.
Senator, you are a strong female leader in the Senate, and I want to ask you about words the president said this week about one of your colleagues, Elizabeth Warren.
I'm going to get one of those little kids, and in the middle of the debate, when she proclaims that she's of Indian heritage because her mother said she has high cheekbones. That's her only evidence, that her mother said she had high cheekbones. We will take that little kid and say, but we have to do it gently, because we're in the Me Too generation, so we have to be very gentle. And we will very gently take that kid, and we will slowly toss it, hoping it doesn't hit her and injure her arm.
It's not unfamiliar for the president to attack Senator Warren, but he seemed there to be mocking the Me Too movement, which was about defending those who were victims of sexual abuse and harassment. How do you respond to that?
Well, I take Me Too very seriously, and I had, of course, when I was a young woman, volunteered at a women's crisis shelter in Ames, Iowa. And so when we see survivors coming forward, I think that we need to take that very seriously, and we need to learn from this episode in history and make sure that other survivors are able to come forward. And of course, it is something that we need to discuss throughout society, because we need to make sure that we are protecting men and women. They should never go through sexual harassment, sexual assault, or anything remotely similar to that. So I do support the Me Too movement, and I hope that others will as well. We need people to speak up, not hide these horrible circumstances.
Senator, thank you.
Thanks, Margaret.